Defense News. It's proudly sponsored by Navy Federal Credit Union. If you're a member of our nation's armed forces, the Department of Defense, or if your family is, we'd be proud to serve you too.
On this episode of Defense News Weekly, the conclusion of our limited series on one Marine's struggle from war to healing, along a tortured path of addiction. Get an update on John Basara from late in 2024. Plus, the story of an effort to bring recognition to some of World War I's bravest troops. Learn about how Native American service members may be considered for the country's highest military award. And China unveils an amphibious assault ship that can launch fighter jets. Get a first look at the Sichuan. Also, what's in a soldier's massive winter rucksack? Get a look inside the apparently bottomless backpack of a man headed out on a mission. It's the latest in news and analysis from the Pentagon to the platoon, here on Defense News Weekly. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. I'm Pat Hansen. The story of John Basara started in the Marines, where he joined the Corps with a simple goal: to fight for his country and be the best Marine he could be. But the trauma and injuries of war wounded him deeply, and the prescription of opioid medications to ease his pains worsened his struggles. We learned about Basara and his efforts to recover in earlier parts of our series, The Fight Back, originally filmed in 2018. When we left Basara that year, he was still fighting to stay sober and enmeshed in a long struggle with the VA. 6 years passed before we saw him again. In the fall of 2024, we visited Basara for an update. Had he continued to heal and solved his issue with the VA? Find out in part 4 of our series.
It was October 6, 2006 was the first time I actually got struck by an IED. Everybody was on fentanyl, oxycodone, and morphine pills. I started having points to where one wasn't enough. When I got out of jail, I was clean. I went to probation, but I wasn't mentally clean. Nobody ever told me that all this money that we're paying you right now, you're gonna have to pay back. We took our daughter to Disney World, both our daughters to Disney World last year. I made it about an hour and a half, 2 hours. And
which was great for him.
You're completely surrounded by people. It's very uncomfortable as being in crowded places. That's one of my big triggers, is having people walk up behind me, touch me from places I can't see. It really gets me in a bad spot.
Do you feel like if you had made that trip a few years before, you might not have even made it 90 minutes in there?
He wouldn't have made it through the doors, I don't think.
I wouldn't have made the walk and the boat ride over to get into.
Does that look like progress to you?
It's absolutely progress.
Every time, it seems like every couple years I'll notice where we went to a concert for the first time in ever. We've never been to a concert where it was really crowded, loud music, no exit strategy immediately. He wouldn't have even been able to walk through there years ago. Now, we stayed, 2 hours in the concert, and then we left. He's grown so much. The growth is that he doesn't see, but I see it, is unbelievable.
Last time we saw you was in 2018.
Right.
You're in a very different place, John, just based on the time we spent with you then. How would you kind of describe the place you were in then versus the place you find yourself in today?
It was more or less just realizing how to live life normally and how to cope with, I guess, my PTSD and the traumatic brain injury and how they affect my life, and things that caused me a lot of problems in the years prior. It was just all learning how to live normal again, Meeting my wife was the biggest thing that got me past all my troubles that were, you know, some self-caused from medicating, and, you know, you can only do that for so long, and it just exacerbates the problem, makes everything worse, which nobody knows that going in, you know what I mean? And you're taking what you're supposed to take, and next thing you know, you're addicted to something that you had no intention of ever taking, so.
Well, last time we saw you, you were dealing with some back issues. You still have the back pain, or is it
Back
gotten
pain,
better?
back pain's actually probably worse. My neck's really starting to act up. I mean, it's pretty bad. I can't, just moving it back, you can hear it cracking, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But my lower back pain's still, you know, it still hurts, you know? It's just something you have to deal with. One day we got a phone call when we were driving on I-95. Some lady from, I think it was Ohio or Michigan, St. Paul.
No,
Oh yeah, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Called us and was like, this $101,000, are you gonna work and make any more money than your VA? I was like, no, I can't work. I was like, I'm living totally off my VA disability. She was like, okay, well, wipe the debt out. Just over a phone call.
Over a phone.
Something that took me weeks of being in the building right in front of these people.
And they caused so much distress, and you have a baby, and it was through Christmas. It's like all that stuff, and then just one phone call changed everything.
bad.
You must have almost crashed on the highway.
We were like almost crying.
It was
We were
the
so
happiest thing, you know, the weight of $100,000
sitting on you.
taken off in, you know, the flip of a switch. It was amazing.
I assume you just have no idea what behind the scenes led to that decision.
We have no idea.
Absolutely.
Something.
It was somebody my wife probably called, either a senator or a congressman, or somebody reached out, got in touch with those people, and that lady called and took care of our problem.
Where do you stand in terms of getting the recognition for your, you know, earning the Purple Heart you earned? Has that changed at all since we last spoke with you?
No, not at all. I've actually taken 2 trips with my dad and my wife and my kids down to Quantico, Virginia to try to track my old commanding officer down, which was apparently all I needed was to get his sign off saying he was there, he was my commanding officer, this happened on this day, but nothing's ever come from it. And we've taken 2 full trips, making thousands of phone calls, you know, and since then, you know, I didn't know this, but going through court the one day, the metal detector went off and they started waving my knee. So I must still have some shrapnel in my one knee. It's kind of a pride thing, you know what I mean? It's something that you earned, you know, other guys have it, you know what I mean? And it's something you did earn. You spilt your blood for this country. It's like, that's one little thing that should be automatic. It shouldn't be having to fight, you know, I shouldn't have to go and fight for that kind of stuff. Main thing is finding something that makes you happy and living for that. You know what I mean? And
every day.
making your life about that and focusing on all the good things from that and not living in the past and not worrying about, you know, things that you can't control.
Right.
And, you know, finding somebody who understands and is empathetic to you is the biggest thing, is somebody who, well, it doesn't matter if, you know, you mess up or anything like that, will still sit there and support you is the biggest help. It's a lot of what helped is living in the moment you're in, not living in the past, and not having that as little as possible affect your now. Because I lost so many years of letting that, you know, cripple me, you know what I mean, from doing anything I wanted to do. I just feel much better about things. I'm much happier. I'm not just miserable all day for no reason, you know. I have things that make me happy every day and things that I want to focus my energy into, you know. So I want to watch them grow.
When we return, a move to get Indigenous soldiers from World War I the military's highest recognition. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. In the spring of 1918, an American soldier named Otis Leader was fighting in the grim battlefields of World War I France, and in grave danger. His machine gun crew wiped out. Instead of retreating, he attacked, crawling through a ravine to take out 2 machine guns and capture 18 German prisoners. They are the kind of heroics that earn troops high military honors, and Leader had several of those bestowed on him, but he wasn't considered for the nation's highest recognition for bravery. Corporal Otis Leader was an Indigenous American, a descendant of several tribes who enlisted as a code talker for the Army. Historians and family members said they believe race had everything to do with why he wasn't considered for a Medal of Honor in his time. Now, Leader is among hundreds of service members eligible for the medal under a new effort by the government. Reporter Riley Cedar covered the story and joined us to give details. Riley, thanks for joining us. Tell us a little more about Otis Leader and why he might not have received the Medal of Honor around the time of his service.
Yeah, so Otis Leader was a Choctaw code talker, and he was a corporal in the Army's 16th Infantry Regiment, 1st Infantry Division. For those that don't know, code talkers were service members who used their Indigenous language during the war to obfuscate and encrypt messages behind enemy lines. They were pivotal to the war effort. And Leader's bravery is well documented. He once destroyed a machine gun nest single-handedly after some of his men had been killed, and he captured 2 machine guns and he defeated 18 enemy soldiers in the process. So because of these acts of bravery, he received the Purple Heart, the Silver Star Medal, the Victory Medal, and the French Croix de Guerre with Palm, which are some of the most notable awards of valor the military can offer. He also did receive many, many other awards. These are just some of them. And though the military might not come out and say it, Leader's family, especially his great niece, Tawana Anderson Edwards, who I had the pleasure of speaking to, as well as some historians and archivists I spoke to, feel that it is a direct result of Leader's race and cultural heritage as a Native American that he was not given the Medal of Honor, despite his acts of valor. There were men with the same awards and distinctions from that time period who were white who did receive the Medal of Honor.
So what's changed? What is the government doing now?
So in 2018, Congress passed the World War I Valor Medals Review Act, and that's a law that was included in the National Defense Authorization Act that year. And what that law basically does is it awards the services, specifically the Army and the Navy, the ability to retroactively award a non-white service member the Medal of Honor. There are a couple of requirements, though, for them to be eligible. So to qualify, veterans have to fall under one of 5 categories. They have to be Jewish American, African American, Native American, Hispanic American, or Asian American. They also have to have received the Distinguished Service Cross, the Navy Cross, the French Croix de Guerre with Palm, or have been recommended for a Medal of Honor at the time, even though they didn't receive it. Once a service member with these distinctions is brought to the attention of the Army or the Navy, it is up to the Army or Navy to decide whether they want to give retroactively that veteran the Medal of Honor. Was that in so many words, it was about time for Leader to be honored. Not just Leader, but other Indigenous World War I veterans. There was also a feeling of how much sacrifice these Indigenous veterans had made for their country. She spoke of the fact that code talkers were asked to use a language that many had been taught at American Indian boarding schools to never use. You know, American Indian boarding schools, for those that don't know, were schools erected in the late 19th century. Their entire purpose was to remove the cultural traditions and language of American Indian children, all in an effort to assimilate them into white American culture. So it's just an interesting dichotomy that many of these unbelievably brave code talkers and Indigenous war veterans were asked to use this language that they were oftentimes beaten. It was beaten out of them that they weren't supposed to use this language, and here they are serving their country, and they are asked to please use this language. So just a lot of interesting feelings, but most of all, she just wanted the recognition due to her great uncle.
You can find more of Riley's coverage on this topic at militarytimes.com. And in headlines from around the military, U.S. Central Command released footage recently of strikes in Yemen on Iran-backed Houthi targets. CENTCOM said it launched both missile and air attacks from assets in the region against a range of targets, including a command and control site, weapons production facilities, and weapons and UAV storage sites. The strikes took place between December 30th and December 31st in a Houthi-controlled territory on Yemen's coast. The Iran-backed rebels have been the source of attacks against U.S. and international assets in the Red Sea for months amid unrest in the region. CENTCOM reported no injuries or damage to U.S. personnel or equipment in the strikes. And staying in international waters, China debuted a new warship over the holiday break that it says is the largest in an emerging class of amphibious assault ships that can launch fighter jets. The Sichuan, the first ship of the 076 type, is China's largest such ship yet, displacing 40,000 tons and equipped with an electromagnetic catapult, which will allow fighter jets to launch directly off its deck, according to the official Xinhua news agency. The ship is designed to launch troops to shore in landing craft, then provide them with air cover. It has arresting technology that allow the jets to land back on the boat. China has the world's largest navy and has been working to modernize its fleet, with work ongoing for a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. When we come back, advice for service members on whether to rent or buy a home. That and more after the break. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. On this week's edition of Money Minute, Jeanette Mack from Navy Federal Credit Union is back to give you some pointers to mull over when considering an important question. Should you rent or buy a home? Have a look.
Service members and their families face major decisions on and off the job. But the one military families face most often is whether to rent or buy a home. Owning a home can have excellent long-term benefits, building equity, potential tax advantages, and of course, having a stable place to call your own. The added perk of access to a VA loan can make it a reality more easily, too. Homeownership provides you with a solid asset for your financial future as well. On the other hand, renting gives you the flexibility you may need early on in your military career. It's easier to adjust to unexpected moves, and you're not responsible for maintenance or property taxes. Renting is the way to go if you're prioritizing mobility and lower upfront costs. And the Service Members Civil Relief Act, or SCRA, offers important protections for service members who need to break a lease due to military orders, which is great for peace of mind. Ultimately, the best choice for you depends on your individual circumstances, your financial goals, and personal preferences. Weigh the pros and cons carefully and get advice from an expert to help you decide and make your next right move.
Thanks, Jeanette. We'll see you next week. To get more coverage of military and defense topics, dial in that rangefinder and turn toward militarytimes.com and defensenews.com for more headlines. And to be the smartest gunny in the Corps, sign up for our early bird brief, compiled each morning to bring you the most recent headlines. Lastly, if social media is where you collect open source intelligence, follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter. And just like most junior troops, we're on TikTok, so go find us there as well. When we return, the soldier with the biggest rucksack in the Army unpacks it to show you what's inside. Don't miss it. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. I'm Pat Hansen. The gear in a soldier's pack is a critical set of kit often tailored to a mission. But when that mission is survive in the cold for a really long time and also fight enemies, that pack can get a little large. That was the case for a soldier in a recent Army video who cataloged the contents of an apparently bottomless rucksack he had prepared for a winter outing. Here's a look at the video and a glimpse at the approximately 120,000 items included inside the bag.
Hello, I'm Sergeant Sherry. I'm with A Company 187. Right here, we're celebrating the D Series, which is a series of competitions that we'll be doing here at Fort Drum. We have approximately, I'd say about 65, maybe 70 pounds of that, but we're gonna get loaded up with ammo later on. So we'll reach that 90 pounds for sure later today. We got 2 sets of skis that we'll end up using for cross-country training purposes. That also comes equipped with 2 of our ski poles as well. We got a nice warm trigger finger mittens and also our snowshoes. Can't go anywhere without your water source, so we have our Camelback on top. And now we get into the nitty-gritty of it all. So in our sustainment pouches, we've got our poncho, wet wipes because you never know when you're gonna need them, spare gloves, one of our MREs, an extra neck gaiter because as we all know in the Army, 1 is none, 2 is 1. This is a, we call it our wet weather tops, but what this does is it acts as a really nice tight seal around the rest of our clothes. So not only is it waterproof, but it keeps in all the extra body heat that we need when it starts to drop even colder. They say tonight's gonna get around 4 degrees. We'll see how cold that really is. Other sustainment pouch, we got a tarp, some fat wood, and dryer lint for when we have to start a fire. We're all good to go with that. And of course, our specialized winter MREs. These are helpful when you're going through any kind of snow or when the winds start to pick up. We got the dark lenses here, that helps with snow blindness. So we've got extra gloves, a spare pair of extra socks that's not inside the actual ruck, it's in another sustainment pouch, because just in case anything happens, you always want your feet to be nice and warm. We got another balaclava and a beanie, extra beanie again because 2 is 1 and 1 equals none. So some creature comfort items. We got a balaclava, not a balaclava, just a little shamag, just scarf, just to wrap around for late at night, keeping that extra body heat. And of course, where would we be without extra boots? Again, extra insulating gloves to keep your hands warm. Toiletry kits, our company flag. Insoles, again, extra socks, always extra socks. We got some extra ear pro. This is our waffle top and our waffle bottoms. As you can see, it's knit. It's a little bit better than thermal underwear that you have, but it's long johns and long john top. And again, we have, just as we have our over whites here, we have an over white top in case we need that as 2. For any time we would need a multi-tool, like a Gerber or a Leatherman. So we'll keep other items on us, like protractors for land nav. We'll also keep compasses on us as well. Some of the other neat tricks that we'll have on us, we'll keep a set of what we call ranger beads, and we'll use these to mark distances everywhere we go. There's 2 different things I'm wearing around my neck right now. I've got a headlamp on here that has a red lens and a regular white lens. The other thing that's part of this, our pack list, it's called an Arctic necklace. So it'll have a lighter. Also, we have our chapstick because A, it's important, your lips will get chapped, your cheeks will also get chapped as well. We always pack a few other creature comfort items, whether it be some hot hands, those little thermal packs that we can wrap up, or we always bring a couple of extra treats.
Extra boots and skis? Like, where do you even keep the ammo? Well, that's all we have time for in this episode. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.